What's going on, everybody? It's JohnnyVTV live here on this Tuesday, January 10th. And I did a little spot yesterday talking about why I think certain matchup for the Super Bowl, maybe Chargers Niners, is the way to go, the way to look. And, there's obviously other ways to attack that, but that's something I want to get into at a later time. But today, I've been seeing a lot of talk, a lot of predictions about what the futures awards in the NFL should be this year, about people's opinions and stuff like that. And I just think, let me give out what I think is going to happen, what I think should happen. And there's a lot of interesting takes, but the fact of the matter is there's a clear and concise way to look at this. I think a lot of people are they speak out of fanhood. They're not speaking out of maybe what voters think and where the odds were all year. As somebody that's tracked the odds every day for the entire season and seen a lot of this movement, I think there's a real and clear way to kind of decipher this. So the first thing that I want to hit is MVP. Patrick Mahomes, I don't even think it's close. Mahomes, among a couple other awards, shouldn't be close, and it shouldn't really be up for discussion. But just to kind of hit it, so I think Patrick Mahomes, MVP, he was minus 1,800 before he took the field on Saturday. And afterwards, he pretty much locked it up. 5,250 pass yards, 41 tutties. That led the league, the 14-3 record, getting the number one seed in the AFC. Without Tyreek Hill, that was a huge narrative. Personally, I thought his numbers would take a little bit of a hit, and I was wrong. He had an amazing year. He won his first passing title. I just don't think there's really any question. Jalen Hurts, maybe if he didn't miss those 2 games, we're having a little bit different of a conversation. But once Hurts went down, misses 2 games, he's not going to be able to make that up. And, maybe Joe Burrow had a real chance to win if, the thing didn't happen on Monday night. And he puts up a good game, maybe 350 yards, 3 touchdowns. That was very real against the Bills. I thought that was a real possibility. But because it didn't happen, he's only got 16 games. His numbers take a little bit of a hit. But the fact that Kansas City gets the 1 seed, to me, it's not really a conversation. I think a lot of people are on the same page that Mahomes is and should be the winner. So let's move on here. Offensive Player of the Year. This is another one. This is actually one of my best futures preseason hits to this point. Justin Jefferson, Offensive Player of the Year. I predicted him to win this at 20-1, as well as lead the league in receiving yards at 8-1 or maybe 9-1. But to me, this was a no-brainer. I thought Jefferson was coming with 1,800 yards this year. I wasn't so sure on him last year heading into the 2021 season, but he proved me wrong. And I just think that he leads the league in yards, over 1,800 yards. That's what I thought it would be. 121 or 128 catches. I thought the league leader would have 130 this year. Leads the league in both 8 touchdowns. He led all wide receivers in yards after a catch with 613. Clearly the best option all season long, and it shouldn't be up for debate. I think the only guy who really had a shot to take this away from him was Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill fell about 9 catches short, about 100 yards short. And the quarterback situation really hurt him. I actually thought if Hill had a big game against the Jets, then maybe he would have made this into like a 50-50 coin flip type of game. But because Tyreek Hill kind of fell off a little bit down the stretch, he just had to make up too much ground, and I just don't think that there was any realistic possibility. He had an unreal season, Tyreek Hill, and he deserved a lot of credit for that. 1,700 yards. Almost 120 catches. That's something that needs to be recognized, especially in a new offense. But it's clear Justin Jefferson was the best receiver the entire year. It's not even a debate here. So moving on here, Defensive Player of the Year. This was one of my value picks. My preseason pick was TJ Watt, just because given how good he is and how dominant he's been, the only thing that really could hold him back was the injuries, which ultimately happened. But Nick Bosa was my value pick coming into the year at 14-1. So I had a little half unit on that. And then I added to it at a pretty big position throughout the season. I just thought the Micah Parsons price was wrong. Everybody in the preseason anointed him as the guy already. He kind of he got robbed last year because TJ Watt tied the sack record, and Parsons had an unbelievable year as a rookie. And I think it was kind of maybe a makeup call. And given how talented in the profile, he's got the star on his helmet. That makes a big difference. So I thought everybody kind of ruled in Micah Parsons. He was minus 1,000 through like 6 games in the year. That made no sense. So Bosa was a great midseason buy. And for somebody like myself and other people who bought into that, when he was in the 10-1, 12-1 range, is going to be rewarded, I believe. I think it's pretty much home at this point. Led the league in 18.5 sacks, and he only played 15 and a half games. 56 QB pressures, led the league, 28 QB knockdowns. He was tied for second in tackles for loss. And most importantly, he was the best player on the best defense this season. So it's quite frankly not a conversation at this point. I just think Micah Parsons fell off too much, and it really – for the most part, was only between Bosa and Parsons this year. And if you were paying attention to the odds down the stretch where Bosa was out to like minus 1,000, even minus 1,250 on some sites heading into like the last week of the season, then you'd clearly see like there was just no shot. Micah Parsons, he didn't do enough on the stat sheet in order to warrant serious consideration to close the gap. So I would think that Bosa probably closed about minus 1,500 at least. The last game of the season. So I think it's got to be home. There's just no other explanation. So those are the 3 ones that I feel like we really shouldn't think about. And another one that I'm hearing a couple people think it should be different. Sauce Gardner, Defensive Rookie of the Year. He's been the leader in this award since week 3. And the price coming down the stretch wasn't even correct. I thought he should have been at least minus 2,500, minus 3,000 over the last month, but he was in like the minus 900, minus 1,000 range. I mean, he was the best PFF graded cornerback in the league. A lot of voters like to look at these analytics and these rankings and stuff like that. It was the best in the NFL, not just for rookies, but for everybody. And then Patrick Surtain was right behind him. Like, he beat out Jalen Ramsey. He beat out some elite corners. Sauce Gardner was locked down all year. Struggled one time against T. Higgins early in the season. But outside of that, he didn't allow 40 yards from any particular receiver in Tyreek Hill in week 18. He allowed a single touchdown, league high 21 pass breakups. He didn't get the interception numbers like Tariq Woolen did. That's flashy. But that's just because a lot of teams didn't really throw at him. And again, he was the best player on one of the best defenses in the NFL this year in the Jets. So he's going to get serious consideration. The New York market is a huge thing. It's a lot of bias. So I do think Sauce Gardner should be home in this one. And he was just terrific. He really was. And I don't know why people would vote for Hutchinson, who at his best was plus 600 in the last couple weeks. Yeah, he had a good game against Green Bay, but that's not enough. And in my opinion, Tariq Woolen should have been the guy that was the runner-up. And whether that comes to fruition or not, it doesn't really matter as long as Sauce wins, because nobody's betting who comes in second place. And then here's where things start to get tricky, the last 3 awards. So my preseason pick for Offensive Rookie of the Year was Chris Olave. And Chris Olave had over 1,000 yards. He had over 70 catches. He missed 3 to 4 games, depending on, not playing a full game like Seattle. He left early. Olave was unbelievable this year. Start to finish, I think he was the best receiver. Unfortunately, all season long, the market disrespected him. And I think that's probably because they didn't respect the Saints. And because of that, it was always somebody else ahead of Olave, whether it was Dameon Pierce, Breece Hall, Kenneth Walker, Garrett Wilson, whatever the case may be. So I still think Olave has a very good case to win. And when you consider the finishes of Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave on the stat sheet, and then you look at their odds, that doesn't make sense. And I've been saying it for months. Why would Olave be in the 20-1 range and 25-1? And I actually saw him close closer to like the 12-1 on one book heading into the last week. So it didn't really make sense to me. I actually think Olave should still be the guy to get it, but he won't. And I think, with the New York bias, I think Garrett Wilson does have a really good case because he was unbelievable this year. 83 catches, over 1,100 yards, which both led all rookie wide receivers. He played with 3 bad quarterbacks. He played with Joe Flacco, Zach Wilson, and Mike White. Imagine what he does with even like a Jimmy Garoppolo or a Derek Carr. So he was clearly one of the best players on the field at all times for any team this year. So I think he probably edges out Kenny Walker, who, while he was impressive, I just don't think people are going to buy Walker as much. I think this was a very soft award, and Wilson would probably get the slight nod over Walker, who is deserving, but I just don't think he gets it. And then, of course, Brock Purdy, I've been hearing a lot about. Now, I get it. 6-0, Mr. Irrelevant, comes in, leads the league in touchdown passes in the last 6 weeks. He had great stats. Me personally, though, I wouldn't vote for him, and I don't think he should win because he only played 6 games. To me, that's like giving the Cy Young Award to a pitcher who only made 12 starts. I just don't think it should be – I don't think it should be a thing that we're doing here where we're discounting guys that played 16, 17 games. And Brock Purdy comes in – yes, what he did was impressive, no question about it. But he comes into the best roster, not just the NFC, but maybe the NFL, with the best defense, with one of the best systems, coming in Kyle Shanahan's system. I think that's where a lot of people are getting lost with this. If Brock Purdy played 9 games, then okay, I would buy it. But 6 games to me is just not enough, despite how impressive he was in that limited time. So I really wouldn't give Brock Purdy the consideration to win this award. I think he should be up there, especially given how soft it is. But a lot of people are talking about Purdy, and I think he should fall short. And the reason why is because he was running his coach's system, which is why I think Kyle Shanahan should get Coach of the Year. 13-4 on a team that was projected 10 wins, finishes number 2 in the NFC with the 2nd seed. They closed out on a 10-game win streak. They were 3-4, and they finished 13-4. He had to deal with 3 different quarterbacks. He turned Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant, into a guy that can win 6 games when this Niners team could put up 30 points on anybody. So I just think Kyle Shanahan deserves a little bit more credit. He's the reason for Brock Purdy's success. And, you know, we could talk about why Sirianni should get it. We still got the 1 seed. And I could see Sirianni winning it, but he had one of the easiest schedules. He lost flavor down the stretch with Gardner Minshew, didn't win with his backups. Meanwhile, Shanahan goes 6-0. Everybody's talking about Brian Daboll for Coach of the Year. He's very deserving. He was a guy I liked coming in. I thought he was going to do really well for the Giants. But everybody's acting like they expect the Giants to be bad. I don't understand where that's coming from. They were projected 7 wins coming into the year. They close out with 9. So only 2 more wins than what they were expected this year. And yes, he didn't have a great roster, but he had the easiest schedule in the NFL. Coming into the year, they were ranked as the best and easiest schedule in the NFL. And while it's impressive, here's something I think of note. If Brian Daboll was doing this in Chicago, I don't even know if he'd be on the ballot. He's in this consideration because of the New York bias. And I'm not saying he's not deserving. I'm not saying he didn't have a fantastic year. He did. I really like Brian Daboll. I think he's a fantastic coach. And I think he's just going to continue to get better with this program as they, accumulate more talent. But the New York bias is there, man. Like, why should Daboll get this award over Doug Peterson? Coming in to a team that was the first pick in the draft last year, that had to wipe off the Urban Meyer aura around it, leads them to the AFC South title. He won his division. Daboll didn't even win his division. And fine, granted, like the division in the NFC East is a lot better than the AFC South, but Peterson's not getting the consideration Daboll is. Pete Carroll, 9-8, had as many wins, beat the Giants head-to-head. He got in the playoffs at 9 wins. With Geno Smith, they were projected 5.5 wins. They didn't have a great defense. To me, like, the Daboll thing is nice, but you have other guys who are in similar situations who aren't even going to get the credit. And that's why I think it really should be between Kyle Shanahan, maybe Sirianni should be getting some consideration. I think Shanahan is the clear winner here after what he's pulled off with all the adjustments that he's had to make. like going through 3 different quarterbacks. I just don't think Dable should win. Dable definitely gets consideration, but in my opinion, it's got to be Kyle Shanahan. I just think if you're going to give it to Brian Dable, why wouldn't you give it to Doug Peterson or Pete Carroll? If we're taking this from an objective approach, and we're removing the New York bias, the New York media influence, Brian Dable doesn't deserve it. He wouldn't get this award if he was coaching the Chicago Bears and he did what he did. That's just a matter of fact. So that's why I think Kyle Shanahan, in all objectivity, deserves this award. And they're going to be like, oh, he's got the best roster. Yeah, but they're so good because the way they're coached. Like, you could look at the situation like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, how bad the Bucs were. The Bucs have one of the best rosters in the NFL. They have Tom Brady at quarterback. They were terrible this year. They were terrible. They shouldn't even make the playoffs. The Panthers should have made it over them. I mean, that just goes to show with the coaching. Like the Bucs the last couple of years under Arians had a top 5 offense and a top 5 defense. And then this year they win 8 games. Would they go 8-9 to win the NFC South? They were the worst run team in football. They were maybe a mediocre at best defense, slightly above average. They were a bad offense. So to me, like, this coaching matters. That's why I think Shanahan is the most deserving candidate. And, people could say what they want. And I am a Brian Dable fan, but I don't think Brian Dable deserves to win. I know people in the media will push this because they're Giant fans or they're fans of Dable or they have a huge ticket on Dable. Like, I personally just don't buy it, and I don't think he's deserving of it this year. I definitely think this should be Kyle Shanahan with a decent lead. And I think the voters should recognize that. So last award here, Comeback Player of the Year. I was in on this since week 4. Geno Smith. Everyone's like, okay, well, what did he come back from? Before I even talk about why, this is the weirdest award to handicap because there's no definitive guidelines on who's coming back from what. So, like, the Comeback Player of the Year in the past was Alex Smith, obviously, just by stepping foot on the field. So there's no clear guidelines. This is a very murky one. People are like, oh, what's Geno Smith coming back from? Like, he's been irrelevant. He's been dead. Like, he hasn't played meaningful football pretty much in about 10 years since he was a Jets quarterback. Like, he's had some backup starts and, like, come in mid-game type of thing. But, I mean, this guy comes in this year, had to compete for his job with Drew Lock. Throws for almost 4,300 yards, which is a franchise record in his first year as the Seahawks starter. Throws 30 touchdowns, almost 70% completion, over 100 passer rating. The Seahawks are 9-8 in the playoffs. Projected 5.5 wins, like I said. 4 more wins than what they were supposed to get to make the playoffs. He was phenomenal. You're like, yeah, okay, he fell off a little bit down the stretch, but he still did enough. The market was not priced correctly on this all year. When he was like minus 1,000, minus 1,100 compared to the rest of the field, he should have been minus 5,000. Like, Christian McCaffrey and Goff came out of nowhere like the last 3 weeks of the year. McCaffrey, like, okay, he played 7 games last year, but everybody knows McCaffrey is one of the best players in the NFL. He was the number 2 overall pick in fantasy. Like, yeah, he's coming back from an injury, but how can you give it to a guy? That's like giving Derrick Henry the award. Derrick Henry played 8 games last year, yeah, but, like, he almost had 1,000 yards in 8 games. Like, what are we giving it to one of the best guys in the NFL for? To me, that didn't make any sense. McCaffrey shouldn't have any bearing. Now, Barkley does have a case, in my opinion. He had the best year since his rookie year. Cleared 1,200 rushing yards. Over, I think he had 11 touchdowns, maybe 12 in the rushing game. Was a huge factor in why the Giants are in the playoffs. So he definitely has a case, but, like, he played 13 games last year. He played a lot of games. But if you want to put him on the ballot, like, I totally understand that, but I don't think it's really close. I think Geno Smith is the guy. And people are going to talk about, well, what about Nick Gates from the Giants who broke his leg? I agree, but it's just hard to give the award to an offensive lineman. Like, it's very difficult. Or Brandon Graham, who tore his Achilles or his ACL. But it's hard to give those guys the awards. Like the quarterback is front and center, and the fact that he made the playoffs, that kind of puts the stamp on it. That's why I think Geno Smith should be the guy to ultimately get this award. And, it's been a great year, and they're probably going to get mopped by Seattle or by San Francisco in the wild card round this weekend. But I just feel like given the season he's had, this is the award that's got to be his. I just don't think McCaffrey should be getting it. He shouldn't even be in consideration for this award. Neither should Goff. It should pretty much be Geno and Barkley, and I think Geno's got a healthy margin to decide this award for him over Saquon Barkley. But just wanted to give out my thoughts, and we'll be talking a little bit more about it this week, as well as talking about the games, the wild card games. So we have a live show, myself, Joe Calabrese, John Burgess, and Brad Thomas. So feel free to tune in on Saturday at 11:30 Eastern Time. Talk to everybody soon. Best of luck this weekend.